Good evening and welcome to the 2021 Winter Webinar Series, COVID-19 Addressing Needs and Resilience, sponsored by American Baptist Women's Ministries. My name is Reverend Dr. Gina Jacob Strain, and I serve as the Executive Director for American Baptist Women's Ministries. We are so pleased that each of you joined us, and we hope this webinar will provide useful knowledge and resources. Let us pray. I will share Psalm 67 as the beginning of our prayer. May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations. May the peoples praise you. God, may all the peoples praise you. May the nations be glad and sing for joy. For you rule the peoples with equity and guide the nations of the earth. May the peoples praise you, God. May all the peoples praise you. The land yields its harvest, God. Our God, bless us and keep us. And in this Lenten season, draw us nearer and deeper to you. Lord, bless all that are attending the webinar this evening. Bless our presenter. And Lord, open our minds and our hearts and our ears so that we may receive the new knowledge and tools that will be shared this evening. May the grace and peace of God be with us. Amen. Just in case this is your first time attending one of ABWM's webinars, I want to share a little bit about us. We are a Christ-centered ministry with a commitment to encourage and empower women and girls to serve God. American Baptist Women's Ministries is a diverse, intergenerational community of American Baptist women and girls serving in ministry in Christ's name in the U.S., including Puerto Rico, with local, area, region, and state and national levels of ministry. American Baptist Women's Ministries strives to create and sustain communities of passionately faithful, mission-minded women and girls engaged in worship, service, and friendship. Our ministries include education and prevention of domestic violence and human trafficking, building beloved community, and developing leaders. You can register and find out more about our webinars by visiting our website, www.abwomensministries, or going directly to abwomensministries.org/webinars. Now I will turn it over to my colleague, Wendy Clemmer, ABWM's project manager.
Thank you, Gina. It is an honor to introduce our presenter for this evening. Malissa Arnold is the program coordinator for the Drug-Free Communities Grant at Mercer Council, which focuses on assisting communities with drug and alcohol misuse and focuses on families, students, and other individuals across the lifespan. She is certified as a prevention specialist, nurtured heart trainer, tips trainer, laughter yoga leader, and in mental health, first aid for youth and adults. She holds a bachelor's degree in history and political science from Salem Women's College and a master's degree in public policy and administration from Rutgers University. Without further ado, I turn it over to Malissa.
I want to emphasize it has never been approved as a smoking cessation device in the United States. In fact, there are a couple countries that have tried to put it in their smoking cessation programs, and sometimes they've had to pull it out. Since it is a nicotine and tobacco product, there have been some linkages to co-occurrent use. So people vaping and the nicotine, and then also smoking, going back and forth. So that's something I definitely like to point out, that just because it was advertised as something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is. Here you have over 4,000 deadly toxins are in smoking, and that's absolutely true. But vaping, they kind of forget to add what the true story is, and here it is. So when I said that vapor is a misnomer and it's not necessarily vaping, it's one thing that we in our area call it is an aerosol. Now, I don't know if any of you ladies lived through the 80s like I did, but I had big hair. It's kind of hard to see it now, but big hair, used a lot of rave hairspray, maybe white rain hairspray. I'm sure there's people out there laughing. But what happened to your counter after you sprayed all that hairspray? I know that there was a sticky film on my counters. And that's exactly what we're seeing with vaping. So vaping, the liquids are very, very heavy. They're thick, and since it's not water, it's not just evaporating, it is actually settling. And there's actually become a phenomena called third hand smoking. You've heard of second hand smoking. That's when you breathe in somebody else's smoke. But with vaping, we've actually seen something called third hand, because since it does settle on surfaces, people touch those surfaces and it gets absorbed into their skin. It gets, maybe some people put it in their mouth, especially children. This is something that we're worried about. And it kind of transfers that way. So the third hand smoking is absolutely, or third hand smoke, which is an aerosol, is absolutely something that we're considering. Some of the particles here, the ultrafine particles, we see lead, we see diacetyl, which is linked to serious lung issues. Now, a lot of people who are against vaping talk about popcorn lung. That isn't as prevalent as we thought it would be, but it is absolutely something that has happened, and it is something that has a possibility of happening. And then, of course, that nicotine. Vaping has nicotine. And I kind of want to emphasize that, and I'll talk about more about that when I get into the flavors. Just a second. Okay. All right. So what is it? As I said, I was talking about that early development from China. They call it a cigarette. It looks exactly like a cigarette. It had fluid in it instead of the heat. It had an internal battery and heat element instead of the external flame. Then it kind of developed into e-pens and hookah pens, and you can see both varieties there. Then it became a mod. And people still use all of these versions, but this is kind of the evolution that we've seen. So the mods are something that's very interesting. It's become a project, really, kind of a hobby. So with mods, it's short for modification. You can change the ohms ratio. You can change the heat. You can change how big of a vape is released, how fine the particles are. They have coils inside, and you can adjust the coils, and you can put the juices on the coils, and it changes just everything about it. So they have stickers for these things. They have all kinds of like different colors and styles. So you really can modify it to get the experience you want. And then, of course, the pod base. Now, this is something that became very, very popular very, very quickly. And I will be talking about that in just a little bit, about how the pod base really, really changed the landscape for youth use in the United States. Now, the next evolution is disposables. And we have seen these just mushroom. And I put on here kind of sketchy beginnings. Now, the biggest one, right, one of the biggest companies is called a puff bar. And I'll show that to you right here. So here's the logo, puff bars. Now, as you can see, it's kind of a solid unit. Some of the other ones that you saw on the other ones had removable parts. This one's a little bit more like the hookah pens, where it's one sealed unit. Now, a disposable, when I say it has sketchy beginnings, this puff bar company was traced to another company called Cloud9. And then from that, they really couldn't find who owned it, who was manufacturing this. Many of these products do come in from China. And some of these places that sell and distribute aren't registered, aren't licensed. So we're very, very concerned about these disposables. And one of the main reasons is that it falls into the cracks of many flavor bans. Now, I'm kind of giving you a lot of information, and then I'm going to parse it out later. when we're talking about flavors, it's just that. When you inhale these solutions, they taste like whatever it is. So this one that I happen to show you, this one is Cool Mint. That comes with its own concerns. When you have a mint or a winter or a frost or an ice flavor, just like if you think about gum, if you're eating just peppermint gum, it's minty, it has a little bit of a tingle. But if you were to eat like a winter fresh or a winter green, your mouth gets really hot. Same thing. Menthols and mints and ices and frosts help deaden your responses, and so you don't feel it going in and it's not as harsh. That's why menthol cigarettes are marketed very hard to certain populations that have less money, because you feel like you're getting more bang for your buck because you're getting numb by that menthol flavor. There was one here. So this is mint and strawberry. You can change from one to the other. As you can see, this one's kind of like a cylinder and not the stick. I have one that's chocolate milk flavored. It's amazing the kind of flavors that you can get. But these are all different kinds of brands. These are called flares. Pop is another big brand that we're seeing here. So disposables. Since it's just all pre-filled, the battery's in there, the burner is in there, the flavor obviously, and everything's pre-filled, you have less control of what you take in. Now with a disposable with a cartridge system like the one I showed you, like the Juul that you might have heard before, it actually either puts on a light after you've inhaled for a certain period of time, or it actually cuts you off so that you're not taking in too much. These don't have any of those. They don't have any bells and whistles. And with all vaping products, the nicotine concentrations in these things are much higher than even cigarettes. So one thing I wanted to emphasize is that a pack of cigarettes has about 2.5% nicotine concentration. Most vaping products have 5% nicotine concentration. And nicotine is incredibly addictive. And I think that's where we're going here. So how do they get nicotine from these items into teenagers? One of the best ways was to put it in flavors. So we saw youth use of these products skyrocket. Now remember, when these were originally designed, they were designed for people to try to stop smoking. One thing we have noticed, and one thing that the Juul company was very much involved in, is that we have an entire generation now who have never smoked a combustible cigarette, but are addicted to nicotine because of these products. And that is obviously very, very concerning. So we saw the big boom between 2016 and 2018. As you can see here, it says 78%, almost 3 in 5 teens are vaping, and then more high school students than adults smoke e-cigarettes. So exactly the opposite of what the goal was. Remember? So only 1 in 3 teens who vape know that there's nicotine involved. In fact, most of them say, I'm attracted by the vape flavors. And one thing I wanted to point out is right here at the bottom of my screen, there are 5 juices. It says Candy King on it. Now, those don't have any names written on them of what their flavors are. But I bet many moms out there can tell what the flavors are just by the way that the packaging looks. And if you can identify that as an adult, just imagine how a child who associates these flavors and these patterns with candy can easily identify this. So just to fill you in, so the one in the middle, the yellow and green one, that's Sour Patch Kids. You can tell by the design. The one next to it on the right is Swedish Fish. And then we have Trolley Gummies is the blue one, and then strawberry and strawberry on each end. So as you can see, these are very, very appealing. They taste really, from what I hear, they taste really, really good. They smell good. I used to work with a woman who I jokingly said she had a cotton candy break every day at 10 o'clock because I would walk through this cloud that smelled exactly like cotton candy. So this is one of the ways that they trapped youth into getting this, into getting involved in these. And it's interesting the way that the flavor industry works. There is actually, as I said, I do a lot of research on this. And once I actually came across a horseradish flavor and a crab legs flavor of of vape juice. So disgusting. So about nicotine. One thing, so I'm talking about the contents that are inside these vapes. So first of all, nicotine salts are something that were developed by the Juul company, and you've heard me use that term. The cartridge systems that you saw there on that evolution CD slide, and I'll show you some of these. So this is a Juul. No, this is a Flare actually, which is a generic of Juul. And then this is another version, as you can see. These look very much like thumb drives, right? And that is how it was for the longest time. Young adults were bringing these into schools. Teachers and parents had no idea what these were. They thought they were just USBs, right? So this pod right here, this contained nicotine. And what the Juul company did to kind of revolutionize nicotine in general is that they developed something called nicotine salts. Now, nicotine salts raises the pH level to where it's very balanced. And so when it goes down, it doesn't burn your throat. It doesn't hurt as much. So it tricks you into thinking it's not that bad. You're not coughing it out. Nicotine is a pesticide. It is a poison. And I know that this has negative connotations because when you hear terms like cocaine and heroin, you automatically think, you know, death, because we have a heroin epidemic here in the, or opioid epidemic here in the US. And I just want to emphasize that it has this same addiction quality, which is very scary. So, oh, I'm so sorry. I just heard that my audio is fading out when I turn my head. I will definitely try not to do that. So nicotine, so e-cigarettes, as I mentioned before, have nearly double the amount of nicotine as regular cigarettes. And when you talk to young adults about this, they're like, well, I only vape nicotine free. Well, I just want to emphasize that labels are lying. Sometimes there's very little oversight of these, and many times nicotine-free products have at least trace amounts of nicotine in it. And you know, kids are starting this because they're curious, they like the flavors, and then the next thing they know, they are trapped in an addiction. So a little word of advice on these flavorings. Many times you will see commercials that say, or pro vaping saying, well, these are food and drink quality. These are approved by the FDA for consumption. Well, one thing that they have never been tested for or approved for is going through the respiratory system, being burned and pressurized, and being put, oh boy, okay, sorry. Now I hear there's a black box. It is my speaker view. Let me get rid of that for you. There we go. It should be smaller now. Okay, so the flavors alone, when they are pressurized and when they go through the process of becoming an aerosol, actually can become cytotoxic. Now, cytotoxic means obviously death to a cell is the Latin breakdown there. but you might have heard of cytotoxicity for venom. That's how they rate venom. Now, when I say cytotoxic, it doesn't mean the first time it touches your mouth that you're gonna, all your cells are going to die, but it definitely contributes to breaking down of delicate lung tissue. And one thing that we've seen with vaping is that it's introducing fluids into the lungs, which are already a delicate system anyway, and it's making it soft and mushy and moist, and a great place for spores, bacteria, and other things to grow. We've seen fungus, and now we've even seen COVID being more. The teens who vape are more likely to catch COVID, and then their sickness is more severe because they've got this great, it's got this great environment to capitalize on. Another thing that we're worried about is THC. THC is a psychotropic part of marijuana. People are using these in vapes. They're also using CBD, but THC is different from, old-timey 60s THC. The THC concentration is much, much higher. We're seeing products that boast 90%. I have some here. Here's a pen. But on these boxes, they say that they are 80%, 90% THC concentration. Since THC is still federally illegal, it can lead to dangerous occurrences, because they can have pesticides in there. They can have just a bunch of different elements in it that aren't seen, that don't have oversight. We've also noticed that there's a correlation between nicotine vaping and cannabis vaping. It says that THC, this is from JAMA, it says it's 3.5 times higher, that those who vape nicotine can vape marijuana as well. I see I'm running out of time here. There is a very, very evident vape culture. This is a video that will be posted later that is of a vaping championship. They call them cloud contests. They have tricks and stuff. They have sponsors, just kind of like the X Games. It is very, very pervasive in youth culture. And quite often you can find TikToks, you can find Instagrams of people doing these tricks. This one's very common. It's called a ring, and then it has a cloud around ring. And these are fascinating to watch, even as an adult. I'm asthmatic, so I have no interest in ever putting anything like this into my lungs. But I sit there and watch these tricks and think, wow, how do they do that? And it's not a big stretch to see young adults and teenagers who would see these and say, I can do that. I'm going to try to do that. So that's absolutely something we're worried about. I'm going to try to fast forward this. All right. So how do we recognize when someone vapes? So the first thing is vape trash. And I often want to show adults and parents this, especially. So I already showed you the pod. This is the pod. Then these are the lids that go on the pods. They're just simple plastic pieces. I already showed you the disposables. Sometimes kids or young adults might believe that you don't know what those plastic pieces are, and they might lay them around. You might smell different smells: fruity, minty, sometimes sweet, and with THC, sometimes kind of a skunky. Dry mouth. Sometimes they have caffeine aversion. The smells on clothes, again, that fruity, minty, kind of sweet. And this is especially evident on boys because, sometimes girls have flavored lip gloss. They have a change in the way that their breath smells. And then there's so many products out there on the market that are hiding these things. I'm going to stop sharing right now because I wanted to show you some, and we're also running out of time already. So this is one thing that I like to show people. It looks just like a regular old watch, smartwatch, not really an old watch, but it's a smartwatch. And then if you hit this button right here, it comes out and it is literally a vape. It has a tank and you put fluid in it. So there is an entire industry dedicated to making these types of products. There are sweatshirts that the strings have a place for vape pens hidden in them. There are backpacks that have hidden compartments. There are some kids are very creative and they take highlighters or another fat pen and they stick one of these things down in it. As you can see, this is very compact, right? So if you think of a big, like a thick gauge marker, you can stick that in and you can kind of chew on it during class. So we're very, very worried about that because they are so discreet, because they are so easy to hide. Some children might have been using for a long time and nobody even knows. One of our main concerns with any of these products is that nicotine is just another vehicle to addiction. The pathways to addiction are very delicate in the minds of a developing young adults. We have found that brain development doesn't stop until after 25. And the last part to develop is that frontal lobe area. That is where the decision-making, self-control, and some of the impulse control and some of the very, very important parts of your brain are. And when you introduce things like nicotine and THC, it can interrupt those communication pathways, and it can make it very difficult to obviously to develop your brain. One thing we've seen is, specifically with marijuana, especially these high doses, is that sometimes they can bring on a genetic mental health disorder in more severely, taking anxiety and depression and making it schizophrenia. We've seen a lot of that happen. We've seen jitteriness, anxiety go up with some THC products, and even with some nicotine products. There's digestive issues, headaches, very real nicotine withdrawal effects that we see in our teenagers. Now, one thing about these products is long gone are the days where you actually had to step outside, you had to have a lighter, you had to have a match, and then if you wanted to stop smoking, you either had to knock off that cherry or you just threw out your cigarette, and then the next time you came out, you'd have to do it another time. If you have a product like this, it's ready to go. All you have to do is suck in. And so you can hide it in your sleeve. So you can just use like this. Young ladies, I've seen hiding it in their bra. So I just touched on a few areas of things that we're concerned, but I'd love to hear some of your questions and some of your concerns, and I'll see if I can answer some of those and give you some more information.
This is a great time for everybody to put their questions and questions in the question and answer on your toolbar at the bottom. I do have a question.
Yeah,
Melissa, what is the average age for kids vaping, and when do they normally start vaping?
That's an excellent question. Now, in our area, I'm in New Jersey, and I know New Jersey, California, New York, sometimes the most busy states, we've seen younger ages. We have seen as young as 10 or 11. But I know, I'm sorry. I know you said you have a young child who's almost a middle schooler, but yes, we are seeing it more and more earlier. But the average age is usually about 15. Okay, I'm seeing a question here. Other than sharing some info all over my Facebook page, how can I share my concerns with my family and friends? Facebook is a great resource. Smoking cessation programs. There's a whole bunch of texting programs to help stop smoking. Just, I think one thing I didn't get to is following the money. That's one thing that I talk about with young adults a lot. If they don't want to believe that their health is in danger, I say, okay, well, what companies are investing in these kinds of products? And you find out that it's the tobacco companies that are behind these. A company that we know has lied to us for decades, an industry that we know, for over a century actually. And then alcohol, the alcohol industry is very, very invested, especially in cannabis. So that's one way that I talk to young adults and talk to people in general. Like if they're worried about capitalism or if they're worried about corporate corruption, you can kind of work it in. Well, guess what? The e-cigarette industry is just another way that these corruptions can chip away at our health, because ultimately they want your money, they don't care about your health. So that's one way I bring it up when I talk to people. But it's a hard conversation to have, because there is so many assumptions that it's healthier, that it's a good choice. Well, if youth are using it and they never smoked before, then it's a really bad choice, because they've traded their freedom for an addiction. Whereas an older person who does smoke, if they choose to vape, then that I think is a better choice. But obviously youth are the ones we're really worried about. So what other questions came in?
How are young kids able to obtain these?
Okay, great question. So frustrating question, to be quite honest. The United States actually passed a law in December of 2019 that says that all tobacco products cannot be sold, and tobacco products includes vapes and nicotine products, that nobody under 21 can buy these products anymore. I did see another question come in about age limits. So 21, it's illegal to sell to anyone under 21. Now, the caveat with that is that it's not illegal to own or to use under the age of 21, which kind of seems like a catch-22. Now, the reason why they did that is actually good. They don't want kids to get a record because of this, because it is, considered less dangerous than other illicit substances. But if you are caught selling it to young adults, then you can absolutely get in trouble to the point of losing your license, a fine, and maybe even jail time. But how are kids getting it then? Because we know they are getting it. Easiest, first and foremost, older children, older siblings, older friends, they're getting it from there. Secondly, the internet. It's crazy what you can buy on the internet. Now, there are some laws that have taken place that are trying to limit some of the, not only just the accessibility, but the appeal to some of these products. There have been several flavor bans. In fact, there's something called the PACT Act that has just been put into law, and it actually limits UPS, FedEx, and the United States Postal Service from delivering nicotine products, including juices, vapes, flavors, to anyone. But there is definitely an underground market for this. We see it all the time. And in my area, my county, we actually have a gas station that if you talk to the right guy, he can give you anything you want, and then he Venmos the money to himself. So there is a huge underground market for this. And I hate to tell people that, because they're like, well, how can I stop it? The one thing that we say is watch the money. If your kids get a lot of gift cards, they said the biggest sell for e-cigarettes is in the end of January and the beginning of February, because a lot of kids got gift cards for Christmas and for Hanukkah or other kind of holidays, and they're spending it on these products. So pay attention to what's coming in through your kids and through the mail. if they say, well, obviously during COVID, it's a little easier to monitor this. If they say they're going to the movies and they need $20, did they really go to the movies, or do they have change? Those kind of things. But it is really hard to stop this because there is such an underground market for it. Other questions?
Are school staff, especially coaches, being educated about this?
We're trying. We're trying. All over our great nation, there are local coalitions. In New Jersey, it's mostly county coalitions that are doing their best to educate everyone on this. Obviously, coaches are one of our target areas because of pain medications for opioids, but also because of the way that this can destroy the body. It can destroy your lung capacity. It can make you more susceptible to illness. It can damage or limit your immune system. So teachers have been learning, thank goodness. And me coming in, a person like me coming in and saying, hey, this isn't a thumb drive, or hey, have you seen a strange watch, or do you smell cotton candy at random places in your school? They are learning. Adults are learning. We have how many, 28 on here. If you guys spread the word and say, hey, did you know that these things are really easy to hide, and did you know they're really easy to get, and spread the word. So yes, we're trying to get the word out, trust me.
How much do these vaping things cost, and also how long do they last for?
Excellent question. So these little pod systems, the cartridge pods, that is the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes. So if you imagine smoking 20 cigarettes, now just like every other cigarette smoker, you have your pack a day smokers, you have your 2-pack a day smokers, and then you have your pack every week kind of smoker. It really depends on the child. Now, this, as I said, it's the equivalent of about 20 cigarettes. So they say on the packaging about 200 to 400 puffs. So that means how much you draw. Now, as I said about these disposables, when you're sucking on them, they don't have the stops that some of the other ones have. So if you have a person who's really sucking it in, it's not going to be 200 puffs. It's going to be a lot less. These costs, I've been seeing them on TikTok go for about, I've seen them up to like $45 each, but most of the time they run about 15 to 20 each. So with the pods, so the Juul, so this is a knockoff. Juul was the one that got a lot of young adults into it, but now Juul has really lost favor. So now you're seeing a lot of aftermarket. This one's called a flare, and the disposables are really the more popular, but Juul kind of set the standards for a lot of things. So with Juul, you got something called a starter pack. So you would get the device, and then you would get 4 to 5 cartridges to start. I call it the addiction starter pack. That was about $45. And then when you bought, so if you bought this box of cartridges, this was about $20. So about $5 a cartridge. So about $5 a pack. However, one thing I want to say is that the tobacco company is very nefarious. This product and many others that I showed, this was actually on sale for 99 cents. For 2 summers. This is another cartridge pod system. So this was 99 cents. The actual device was 99 cents. And then of course you would have to pay for the cartridges later. But once you got the device for super cheap, it is very motivating to buy the cartridges.
You said that you can buy these online, but can you buy them at the gas station?
Absolutely.
Stores?
Yep. Anywhere that cigarettes are sold, anywhere that tobacco products are sold. I'm here up in the Northeast. I know we have people all over the world, but Wawa, there's a big, if you look behind the cash register at the tobacco products, you will see these products. Their names are the brands are called Fuse, there's Blue, there's Juul. There are so many different products out there. And yes, they are sold wherever tobacco is sold.
Now, what happens if a parent finds out that their child is vaping? What do you recommend they do?
Okay, well, obviously you know best how to deal with your child. But one thing that I would suggest is to talk to them. Why are you doing this? How did you get introduced to this? What does it make you feel? Does it make you feel like you're trying to escape from something? What attracted to you? What attracted you to it? Are your friends using it? Is it easy to get or is it hard to get? Is it, you know, talk to them, have an open conversation, because you want to try to find out what their sources are. You want to try to find out if there's a problem that they're hiding. We find this a lot with THC because they are trying to self-medicate anxiety or depression using marijuana or nicotine. It comes with a head rush. It comes with increased heart rate and adrenaline. So what are they looking for something? Are they bored? Are they lonely? Are they feeling anxious? Especially during COVID, we've seen an uptick in all substance use. So find out their motives. See if there's something that you can help them with to help fill those needs so that they don't have to have this. But as I said, nicotine is frightfully addictive. So a lot of youth are starting this feeling independent or cool or feeling like they're fitting in with the crowd or trying the new thing, and then they're getting trapped by the addiction. There are several quit lines and texting programs for smoking cessation. A lot of, and that usually includes vaping and other nicotine products. Most states are allowing kids under the age of 18 to get involved. Sometimes they even involve nicotine replacement therapy. So those are some of the ways that you can have with treatment. I would recommend taking their products away from them and then further monitoring how they're spending their money, or if they're carrying their backpacks around, if they're really careful about their trash, if they're changing their privacy. Obviously, this has to do with every substance, but we've seen it a lot with vaping products. Other questions?
That is all for tonight. Melissa, thank you so much for your time and for the wealth of information you provided us tonight. And thank you guests who joined us tonight. Following the webinar, you'll be sent a evaluation. So please complete the evaluation as we rely on your input as we plan future webinars.
I'm going to put my email in the chat. If
Oh.
anybody has further questions, they're welcome to. And on the materials that I post, it will also have some of the cessation programs out there and a lot of resources to a lot of articles that I used to research this. So more information is going to be coming to you.
Now, if you enjoyed the trivia questions earlier this evening, we invite you to attend the Women's History Month trivia event on Saturday, March 27th at 1:30 Eastern Time. It's a great time for fellowship and also have some fun testing your knowledge in celebrating women during Women's History Month. Join us for our next webinar, COVID's impact on women, an emphasis on addiction treatment and recovery. Our speaker is Brenda Edwards, and that is on April 1st. Stay connected with American Baptist Women's Ministries. Visit our website at www.abwomensministries.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We hope that you enjoyed this webinar. If this webinar has been a blessing, informative, please give a gift to American Baptist Women's Ministries. Your support will allow American Baptist Women's Ministries to continue providing these webinars for free. Give now by going to American Baptist Women's Ministries /give. You can give by Venmo. You can give by text, or you can give by check and mailing it to the American Baptist Women's Ministries office.